I'm thrilled you've joined us today for what promises to be a lively and eye-opening conversation. Some of you may have seen a story from one of our Korn Ferry Thought Leadership team members that went viral recently. Its headline grabbed a lot of attention: job hugging for dear life. Well, it turns out the labour market is so tight in many industries and hiring has slowed down so much that employees are planning to stick with their current employers whether they love their roles or not. And here's the kicker: this trend of job hugging has ripple effects far beyond what you might expect. It's reshaping not only how people approach their careers, but also how organisations think about engagement, retention, and leadership. To help us dig into what this means and why it matters, I'll be joined today by two incredible Korn Ferry experts, and together we'll unpack the reasons employees are hanging on, the surprising impacts it has across the workforce, and what leaders can do about it. So stay with us, jump into the comments with your thoughts, and let's explore together how job hugging is changing the world of work. As we know, I can see my guests coming in now. I'm your host, Darren Bolton, Chief Creative Officer at Korn Ferry. And today I'm joined by Stacey De Cesaro, Managing Consultant with the Professional Search Division of Korn Ferry. Nice on time. And Matt Bond, Senior Client Partner in Korn Ferry's Technology Practice. Welcome to you both. I was getting a bit worried there, Matt, for a second. I saw the wheel of doom spinning around.
Good to be here.
Good to have you on board. Okay, so just to get our viewers warmed up, because they can be a little bit shy at times, we do have a poll them to get involved in. So today we're asking, coming up on screen by looks of it, that's nice. What's the number one reason you job hug right now? Is it A, due to the uncertain job market, B, a lack of external offers, C, limited internal mobility, or a life logistics thing? Now, although it's not coming up on screen, you should see a link in the chat. So please get involved and we'll take a look at the results a little bit later. And don't forget, if you see or hear anything you like, or maybe don't, smash those buttons, thumbs up, good point, maybe even insightful. It just gives us a bit of an idea of what you're thinking behind those screens. And of course, we want questions for our lovely guests. Put them to the test, get them in as early as possible. We want to see those questions, get them involved. We like a two-way dialogue here. It's not just us going out to you. Thank you for the poll. We can get that off the screen now, and let's get this hug fest on the way. So Matt, I'm going to come to you first. Outside of what seems quite a cozy sounding phrase, this job hugging idea, what's really going on here? Why are people clinging so tightly to roles that they may not even like?
It's a great question. You know, Darren, I'm an optimist, so I think you're going to hear me talking about there are risks and challenges as well as opportunities. But at a macroeconomic level, wage growth has slowed to what I think is under 4%, and job switching premiums have fallen quite sharply. So it signals a little bit of a cooler market, but the flip side is stability. So companies are holding on to talent, workers are choosing security over risk, given some of the uncertainties in the world right now, even if it means less mobility. And so that's creating this concept of job hugging. And I think there are ways to address it for employees and employers. And hopefully it's just a temporary state we're in right now.
Yeah. And Stacey, if that's the why, let's talk about the what. You know, what does this mean for employees who are essentially kind of parked in place? How does job hugging show up in their careers, their development, even maybe their paychecks?
Yeah, I think it makes you just more stagnant. Your growth is definitely not, you're not challenging yourself for those new opportunities. And then secondarily is just your up and comers are going to likely be frustrated because there's just lack of mobility going upwards in the company as well.
Sure. And Matt, if we sort of flip the lens, we've talked about how job hugging kind of impacts employees, but what about the companies themselves? Does this trend give them an advantage, or will it come back to bite them?
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword for companies and employers. On the one hand, companies benefit from stability, so lower turnover, lower hiring costs, and a workforce that's less likely to jump ship. But on the other hand, people are staying because they feel a little bit stuck. So this can dampen engagement, innovation, and long-term growth. So I think leaders need to turn stability into momentum. I think they need to lean in, address it head on, making sure employees are not just staying, but they're actually thriving. Yeah. And so I think that's really important from a leadership standpoint.
Stacey, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Matt. I mean, I think it's a short-term kind of gain for companies of not having to worry about just keeping your there, but I think there's also long-term instability that can happen when the market turns. You might see this, I mean, what I'm calling a fruit basket turnover of talent as there's more confidence from your employees to go take another role. I think the other upside for companies, it's a great time for them to work on engagement and remind your employees, why they want to stay there long term, though.
Yeah. And please do get your questions in, because we want to really put Matt and Stacey to the test. So get them in and get them in early, because it always happens. Everyone comes in later on. We've left. It's too late to answer your questions live. So please get them on there. So, when one of the things, I suppose, Stacey, at some point, every hug has to kind of come to an end. So what happens when people finally let go? What happens next?
I mean, I think just to touch on earlier, when the market does change, I think that's when that hug ends, right? Great, now I've got that confidence. I'm going to go out and take a role. I've seen this. It's just been kind of a stagnant market, honestly, for the past couple of years. So there's a lot of that up. There's a lot of what I'm hearing from candidates, just pent up resentment, but a big, hesitation in taking that move just because the market's unstable. I'm also seeing that, candidates will move, though, if they, if they feel like there's a much better compensation opportunity on the other side. Other reasons that candidates are leaving, though, too, is just being totally miserable in their jobs and/or have total lack of faith of their company's product viability within the market.
Yeah. And Matt, anything on that one?
Yeah, I agree with Stacey. I think it's interesting. I wanted to talk briefly about opportunities. So, as organizations have flatter structures now and they're cutting costs, it also gives entry-level employees an opportunity to do more. We talk about the impact of AI, for example, on the Gen Z workforce. I have amazing adult children that are entering the workforce and starting off, and it's clear fewer rungs in the career ladder means there's a little bit of risk for automation, but the opportunity is just as strong because they're adaptable. If they get the right training, they can leapfrog and develop new skills and do better things. And so I think reskilling the workforce is going to be a critical priority for employers and employees as we move forward. And that means agile companies and agile employees are actually going to have bigger opportunities by leveraging new ways of doing their jobs.
And do we think employers are currently seeing this as a problem, or are they seeing it as an opportunity? And depending on which one, do you see any examples of what they're doing about it to kind of like embrace it or make the most of it?
Yeah, I'll comment on that. I think I've seen several companies that are approaching, that are not just focusing on retention, but actually focusing on engagement more. It means they're investing in growth, investing in upskilling their employee base. And I think that's such a great opportunity. And people stay because they feel like they're thriving. So I would say the companies where I see this working is they're focusing on culture, they're focusing on upskilling their current workforce and being agile and having authentic, real conversations with their employees and not just leaving it unsaid and talking about how can we. I think the boats rise with the tide when people have a sense of purpose and mission, and I think the human soul craves to improve and do better. And I'm seeing companies take advantage of that, and they're doing better.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, Matt, but I also feel like a lot of companies are not embracing that, and I'm fearful for them because if you don't, when the market turns, you're going to have a whole bunch of built-up resentment and potentially a boatload of candidates or your employees that are going to be exiting. So, I wish more of the companies were doing it. As a recruiter, I kind of like it, though.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point, Stacey. I'll add that maybe retention alone can actually mask disengagement when they just talk about it. And so the question is, how do you invest in growth and development? And so companies who just look at retention, I think you're right, can find stagnated employees and and a lot of dissatisfaction.
Because the last thing, I mean, is trying to realistically read your employees to understand how they're feeling, because it's all, not often does an employee can't go, hey, by the way, I'm really disappointed and I don't like it here, and if there was a better job I'd be going, so just to let you know, sort of thing. Everyone goes, yes, I'm happy here, until they get a chance to leave, and then they tell you what's going on. So the struggle, I suppose, for employees is to try and be able to read, or employers is to try and read how the employees are feeling. And I guess that's from certain techniques and methods to try and get that out, to figure that out. But at the same time, like I think you're saying, is that actually, if you, from a positive, if you imagine that's the case anyway, you should be giving them more opportunities. So maybe that perception turns around from being, actually, it's time for me to go, to kind of going, actually, an opportunity's come now. But actually, I feel like I like it now. I get it now. I'm more connected and all that. So I suppose that's part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like there was more of a focus on that, pre-COVID, of employee engagement, your, employee net promoter score. I feel like a lot of employees or companies have gotten away from that. I think that it would be a great thing to reinstill, even in smaller companies, about closing that feedback loop, letting, we want to hear from you, what's working, what's not working. And then, having them be a part of the solutioning of it. In my prior roles, we would do focus groups of, hey, here's the top 5 things that, you said that you'd like to be fixed. Help us fix those. And then I think that just shows that real commitment to your employee base, that you want to hear from them and you want to make things better, and you want that to be a place for the long term, not just during an uncertain market.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we have some questions for our lovely audience. So I think we're going to pop some of those on the screen, or one at a time, hopefully. Linnell, what's Stacey and Matt's view on how companies should tackle this? How can they identify job huggers and either promote or change roles? Do you think companies are being active on this? A little bit. I probably asked it before the question came in, but similar. Do you want to just touch on that a little bit? So we nod to Linnell's question.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I don't think a lot of companies are being active on this. I think the retention rates are great. So it's like, hey, we're doing great. But I think it's actually the opposite of what they're, will experience in the future. But I think it goes back to having that conversation at a broad level, but also at a grassroots level with your managers, being engaged with their employees. Like, what keeps you here? What makes you frustrated? And just having those conversations and having them be a part of the solution as well. Because it's not only the one-on-one interaction that you get with the manager, but it's also the water cooler with their peers of when someone else is being negative or about the company or the current state of their role. It's, hey, I had something similar, but we're working out with my manager. That just creates positive engagement across your entire employee base.
Yeah, I might add that, companies need to move, and again, I view this as temporary. And so whatever the shift is in 2023, it was the Great Resignation, now it's job hugging. I think companies need to move from being reactive to proactive. And so what's one example of that? I think one reactive way companies often approach retention is to increase pay. But pay is not, employees are often not looking just for more pay. And so I think developing new learning programs, providing opportunities for leadership development and upskilling that. I mean, at Korn Ferry, we work with organizations to do leadership development, succession, and progression planning. And I think as you do that, it creates these meaningful career paths for people. And so maybe that's one way. Learning program tied to career path, which in the end results in higher pay, but the higher pay is not alone in and of itself a retention tool.
Yeah, I agree with, just to touch back on that. I just closed a search and, the compensation was not the main driver. In fact, it was about the same as this candidate was currently making, but it was the ability to be for the growth opportunity. And just also to feel that passion again, to grow something from the ground up and to just have more of a voice within the company. And, of course, it's with a smaller company, but I think even at a large company, you have an opportunity to make even the 100,000 employee base to feel like they've got a voice and some agency at their part within their role.
Another question from Maddie. What signs should newer employees look for to know if it's time to stick it out and grow, or if it's time to look elsewhere? Well, that's a controversial one, Maddie. Who wants to take that one on?
I'll take a shot at that. It's a great question. I think new employees need to avoid the grass is always greener mentality, and to recognize there's a sense of being, I think, gratitude and growing where you're planted is a great way for new employees to develop skills. So maybe it's not their long-term choice, but maybe it's a place where they can say, how can I make the best? How can I develop relationships, knowing that my current supervisor is going to be a reference? And how can I get the most? And so I think the timing of it is when you feel like you're not growing and you have done all you can to get the most out of the experience, then you might look for other opportunities, but not to always be looking for opportunities. I think it's a mindset of growing where you're planted.
Yeah. And I think that, when you start a new role, the intent, even if you're a younger career, you need to stay there for at least 2 years, ideally much longer. You don't want to just have this job hopper. That is probably the number one turnoff. I'm sure you've seen that too, Matt, from our clients, is someone that jumps a lot. So I'd say it starts during your evaluation. When you're evaluating going to a new job, making sure that it is having a good gut check on the company culture, but also the product viability. Check out their stock price. Look at their private equity funding. Who's it coming from? What round are they in? How much are they how are they feeling about it? That will kind of check the mark on the market viability as well. But the culture piece of it, hopefully you've done a good evaluation before you accept that job, so you feel confident staying there for at least 2 years. And the higher up you go in role, the longer you want to stay in those roles too.
Yeah, just to add real quick, an anecdote, I think Stacy's spot on. Earlier in your career, it's expected that there's going to be mobility, but a year or less, people are going to begin to question how long they're going to stay, because when you have new employees, you invest in them. And so I think having a few years in a place, and as you progress, and I work in the C-suite, I can't tell you how many times CEOs or boards have declined a candidate on paper just because they thought they were too jumpy. And they immediately thought there must be something behind this. And you have to be able to demonstrate that you've been in a role and you've been able to have impact either as an individual contributor or as a leader over a period of time or a cycle, and not just at the beginning or at the end.
Yeah. So we have another question from Kathy. So Matt, Stacey, in your experience, what style of development program is more effective in driving engagement and motivation up across diverse functions and job levels? Let's have a stab at that one.
Just personally speaking, the ones in which I feel like it's a safe environment, that employees, that your employer actually wants your feedback about what you're seeing. And just being a part of that solutioning too, of, hey, here's the frustration. Here's where I feel like I need help on developing. And here's where I feel like we need help at a 30,000 foot level, at a company level. What are we doing about it, and how can I help? I think those are ones that employees want. No one really wants a one-way path of communication. Like, you have to do this training, and once you do it, our problem's fixed. Well, anyone can get on and put your training on mute and move on to the next thing. So,
yeah, and I'll say personalized and skills focused are the most effective. So mixing formal training with mentorship. I think mentorship is absolutely key. Giving stretch assignments, providing opportunities maybe for your workforce to move into other functions in the organization, or at least to collaborate closely so they can lift up and develop an enterprise-wide view. And so it's not about one-off workshops, but about personalized skills-based training and mentorship. And you can't forget the mentorship piece. And then real stretch assignments. Believe in people, give them an opportunity to step up, hold them accountable. And if it's in the training context, let them fail, and that's okay. And then give feedback. And I think that's how people grow.
And honestly, I think this is a great question for, people in leadership and development to ask their employee base. Hey, you tell us, we want to work on engagement and motivating you and skilling you up. What can we do to help? And let them kind of drive the conversation.
Sure. I think we've got one more question maybe For Yaswath, with remote work becoming a long-term model, are employees job hugging more because of flexibility or because they feel disconnected and unsupported? How should leadership differentiate between the two? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think the answer is both. And I'll go back to, it's about engagement, even in a remote context, providing mentorship, clear guidance with accountability, and finding ways to have, small groups working on things together. Accountability is so key in remote work, but also I think people long for mentorship. They long for interaction. And I might also suggest that in a remote environment, find opportunities to bring the team together and to work on real issues so that there's engagement and mentorship. So I think both are critical.
Yeah, I agree with you. In this post-COVID world, I do a lot of work within the technology segment too, and they tend to be remote first type of work environments. But there is a real opportunity to drive that engagement and mindful, at least quarterly get-togethers in person, multiple days, and just develop that relationship. Because when the market turns, or if they get approached about something in more compensation and it's still work from home, it's going to be an easy out for them to make that change.
Yeah, and I think I'll just say the employees need an accountability framework. I mean, it's about results, and it's less about FaceTime and the time you spend on it in the world we live today, but making sure that they understand what success looks like, how they're going to be measured, giving them the resources and mentorship to meet it, and then holding employees accountable. I think it's critical to have. It's easy not to have development conversations, but just to jump on a Teams or Zoom and have a conversation about feedback and how things are going.
And just out of interest, is job hugging a generational thing, or are we seeing this across multiple generations? Is it a quite fairly even balanced thing?
That's a great question. I haven't really thought of it in that context, but
I was just thinking from a leader's perspective, should
Yeah.
they be looking at certain, the older ones, the middle managements, or the younger ones?
I mean, I really see it across everyone, though. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's a lot of it is just personality driven. Of just when there's so much instability out there, the first reaction is just to hold on and just see what's around the corner. So I don't know necessarily that it's an age or generation
Mindset.
driven. Yeah, but I do see it, younger career. I think if I had to pick one, it would be that, just because of the instability. You're a little bit more, hand to mouth, and, need to make sure you got a paycheck coming in. Whereas more senior roles, you have a little bit more of a cushion, hopefully.
Yeah, and I might just add that perhaps the area where it's not as prevalent is if you look at an industry lens. I think that there are bright spots in industry, AI, of course, but beyond that, on the tech side, cybersecurity, cloud computing, data analytics, sectors driven by need for security and scale and data. I don't think we're seeing as much as job hugging. So I think it's temporary. I agree with Stacy that it's, I think across generations, but I also think it's industry specific, and there's some real bright spots in industry where we're not seeing as much of this.
So we have time to see our poll, I think, quickly before some closing thoughts. And always come up quickly that time. That's good. We had the spinning wheel again last time. So what's the number reason you job hug right now? Fairly biased. Uncertain job market seems. Would you have expected that result? I guess that's probably pretty familiar. Not uncommon ground. Yeah. Exactly.
That was my vote.
I also think it's in some ways it's a little bit comforting, because what that tells me is that it's temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the good news here, right? Because as the economy stabilizes, as there's less uncertainty, you'll see less of this.
Well, I'm afraid we've got to say goodbye to the poll, and we've nearly got to say goodbye to you. But before we go, we always have our closing thoughts. I call it our Jerry Springer moment. Is there something for our audience to think about, maybe ideally put into action, that you think is really, useful? One single piece of advice. Who wants to go first on that one?
I'll make it Stacy's final thought
Oh,
first.
go for it.
No, I think this is a great time for companies and people in senior leadership to engage with your employee base, have very candid conversations at a top level, but also encourage every manager down to have that direct one-on-one engagement of, hey, we're invested with you. I know we've, likely have a lot going on, whatever the market is doing, but how are you feeling about it? What can we do to make it better? We want to make sure that you're in it not only during an uncertain market, but also long-term in a better market. And then just let them direct what they want to see and then react on it and let them know that they're part of the conversation.
Matt?
Great counsel, Stacy. I'm going to give my inspirational message here, and that is, don't fear. Don't just hold on. I think employees and employers should lean in. And for employees, I think that looks like reskilling. For Gen Z, it's shaping the future of work. And for employers, I think it's taking stability, turning it into momentum. And it's not just about retention, as I like to say, but about ascension for employees. So don't be afraid. Lean in and see this as an opportunity. And it's not going to be forever. And those who I think lean in and see it as an opportunity are going to do well.
So, Stacey, Matt, thank you for today. You've taken a attention-grabbing headline and really helped us understand what's behind it. So, always fun to dig into those big topics. So, thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed it. And see you again soon.
Likewise. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
No problem. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. If you'd like to stay ahead of the latest trends in business and leadership, be sure to subscribe to This Week in Leadership. You'll find the link in the chat somewhere. And if you missed it, you can catch up on the original article, Job Hugging for Dear Life, published last month on kornferry.com. We spent the last half hour talking about jobs, companies and markets, but beneath all of that are people. People making decisions in real time about their families, their futures, and their sense of purpose. Job hugging might look like inertia from the outside, but up close, it's often about navigating fear, loyalty, or simply the hope that stability will lead to opportunity down the road. And that's why conversations like this really, really matter. They remind us that behind every trend like this is a human story, and those stories are what shape the future of work. So as you head back into your own workday, I challenge you to think not only about how you create security, but how you create momentum, the kind that leads to real growth for yourself and for those around you. So thanks again for watching. Until next time, goodbye, everyone.